Hey, I'm Shankar, Principal Architect at Microsoft and a Snowflake data superhero. I support all of our product integrations and partnership between Microsoft and Snowflake, as well as support the customers in getting a single integrated stack between Microsoft and Snowflake.
Welcome to our Snowflake build session on revolutionizing healthcare insights with Snowflake Cortex and Microsoft Fabric. And I'm joined by my good friend from Snowflake, Matt Marzillo. So the prerequisite for this lab is you need to have a Snowflake account and a Fabric account. If you don't have a Snowflake or a Fabric account, you can sign up for the trial of both, right? You'd have a little bit of strong familiarity with Snowflake UI and the Snowflake concepts in general. There are a lot of quick starts and materials out there in both the Learn communities to go and learn a little bit more about it, about both Fabric and Snowflake. And you should also have an account with an account admin access. So we recommend signing up for a trial as you go through this workshop to make sure that you have the necessary access what you need. Snowflake plus Microsoft. To start off with, can you go to the next slide? So the mission of us working together for Snowflake is to mobilize the world's data, apps, and AI, and for Microsoft to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And what we are doing by bringing both of these together on top of the AI data cloud is to help organization achieve more with the power of data through Snowflake and all of the innovations that we are working on at Microsoft. And our partnership started way before 2018, and now we have gone even closer together with all of the recent announcements and integrations that we are working together. And in this lab, we are going to see one such innovation between Microsoft Fabric and Snowflake. Next slide, please. So what the integration that we have with the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform spans across our three major services, which is the Microsoft Fabric and standalone end-to-end enterprise data platform, the Azure AI Comprise platform for running AI-based apps and models, including our Azure OpenAI, and Microsoft Purview, which is our all-in data and governance platform for governing the entire data estate that you have. And Snowflake is a close partner for that, as we have integration on all of these three stacks natively for Snowflake, and we are working on a lot more in bringing those innovations together. In terms of the Snowflake and Microsoft GenAI, next slide, please. We have the Microsoft Fabric, which is the all-alone platform for the unified data platform for the era of AI. Within Fabric is powered by OneLake, which is a single source of truth for all your data assets in different sizes and formats. On top of it is Copilot, which integrates natively across all of those stacks. And you have different workloads or personas that can operate on this data, starting from the legacy data factory to the new data engineering pipeline, the data warehousing capability, the data science notebooks, the real-time intelligence, and finally the most popular one, Power BI. And underneath that is Purview, which can natively integrate with all of these and the other assets to make sure that you can have a single governed platform that provides end-to-end seamless experience in a SaaS-based fashion. Next slide. In terms of interoperability, we announced this around our Microsoft Build event and after Summit, and recently a little bit more on the FabCon that happened in Europe. We have a bidirectional new integration between OneLake in Microsoft Fabric and Snowflake. Part of that is to bring in the Apache Iceberg support in OneLake and all of the tools that operate on OneLake, provide bidirectional access between Snowflake and the data in OneLake, so Snowflake can seamlessly read and access the data that is already available in OneLake, and also extend that to bring in seamless integrations in the future to other applications at M365, Copilot, and various different AI use cases that can run directly on top of OneLake. This is the partnership what we announced, and we're working hard towards getting some of these features out, and there's going to be a few more informations coming in pretty soon around it, but we are in general excited about this possibility of blending in both of these technologies together on one single common platform with the help of OneLake. Passing on to Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Shankar. So let's get on. Thanks for sharing with us with what all that Microsoft has as far as Gen AI and everything that Fabric has and how we integrate. Now let's talk a little bit about Snowflake and what Snowflake has for generative AI, and specifically looking at Cortex, right? So we have Cortex, which is how we're branding our platform for generative AI at Snowflake, right? And you can kind of start at the bottom here. You can see we have our own foundational models, right? So we have our own model, Arctic, and the Arctic family of models, but we also have some other foundational LLMs that are inside of Snowflake, and the ability to perform tasks, specific workloads with them, and then also to fine tune those models or just use them as you'd like to with some very easy to use functions inside of Snowflake. In addition to that, and very importantly and relevant to this lab, is we have these two sister services called Cortex Search and Cortex Analyst, right? So the experience is going to be very similar for both of these services. Cortex Search is about getting insights from your unstructured data in Snowflake with a simple prompt, right? So prompting the service and then getting an answer back. You have some unstructured medical record data, right? You want to know, what a patient's symptoms are. You can kind of prompt that service that's built on top of those unstructured data and get some answers back. Analyst is similar, but it's for structured data, right? So it's a little bit of a different setup, setting up a Cortex Analyst service, but it's a very similar experience from a user standpoint. And you can use both of these either from Snowflake or from external services, and we're going to get into that later here with how we integrate. And then in addition to that, we have our studio experience inside of Cortex AI. We have a Copilot experience, and then we have a document AI, right, which is the ability to extract information from scanned documents inside of Snowflake. And here on the right, we're just showing a lot of the common use cases that we're seeing customers use Cortex AI for, right? So it's everything from automated BI to conversational assistance, as well as text processing, summarization, and even text generation, right? Generating, material for marketing or something like that. Using your Snowflake data as context in generative AI models, generative AI services to generate these material or summarize the material. So there's a lot there, right? So Snowflake has Cortex, Microsoft has a lot with AI and Copilot and Azure OpenAI. How do you use them together, right? So the key messaging here, and if you don't remember anything, the only thing you should remember is you should never feel like you have to move your data in mass if you're using generative AI with Snowflake and Microsoft. That's the key thing here. So there's two sides to that story. So the one side is if you're orchestrating from Snowflake, right? Let's say you're using something like Streamlit inside of Snowflake, or you're using notebooks or worksheets inside of Snowflake, and you want to use Snowflake as context to generate completion, but you've decided that an Azure OpenAI model is the best model for the job. You've tested it out for this particular use case. Whatever model you have inside of Cortex may not fit the bill. That's okay. We have something called Snowpark External Access, which allows you to very easily and securely connect to an external service like Azure OpenAI to then take your data from Snowflake and very surgically pass that as context to generate some sort of completion. We have a quick start that already shows this. We'll reference that at the end. But the idea here is yes, you are moving some data out of Snowflake because you have to, right? Because you're using Azure OpenAI or your Azure OpenAI service. But at least you're not moving it in mass, right? You're just kind of moving over what you need to move over when you need to do it. And it's a really seamless architecture and experience for our joint customers. On the other side of that, and relevant to what we're going to talk through today, is let's say you're orchestrating from Microsoft, right? Let's say you're using notebooks inside of Fabric, or you're using Power Apps, or maybe you're using prompt flows in Azure ML, which is represented here, and you have data sitting in multiple places, including Snowflake, and you want to be able to glean insights from that Snowflake data quickly. You shouldn't feel like you have to move that data over into a Microsoft service to use generative AI. Go ahead and use Cortex Analyst or use Cortex Search on top of that data in Snowflake. And you can just call that service, the Cortex Analyst or Cortex Search Service, right within your workflow in Power Apps or in a Fabric notebook or in a prompt flow in Azure ML. And you can get insights from that data alongside other data sources you might have that are sitting in Fabric or in Microsoft elsewhere. And it's all from kind of a single pane of glass and seamlessly orchestrated from your Microsoft or Fabric workspace. This is kind of a high level architecture, what that might look like, right? So this is looking at Cortex Analyst. So you can see here you have Cortex Analyst sitting inside of Snowflake. Maybe you're using the Python SDK, or maybe you're using the REST API. All that said, it's really simple to call that service from a Microsoft or Azure service. It looks very much the same. This is Analyst. It looks very much the same with Search, right? And Search offers this really great hybrid approach of being able to provide the vector semantic lookup as well as keyword lexical lookup. And we're going to get into showing you how to actually set up this workflow and how easy it is to both set up a Cortex Search service and then also call that service from a Fabric workload from a Fabric notebook that you can then integrate with, a broader workload that includes other data sources. All right, so let's get into that. Okay, so hopefully everyone has a Snowflake account set up and a Fabric workspace set up. The first thing let's go to quickstarts.snowflake.com. And if you type in Cortex Fabric, there should be, let's see here. Let's just type in Cortex. It should be 47. Yeah, getting started with Cortex Search and Microsoft Fabric. There it is. So you click on that. And here is the overview. What Cortex is and what Cortex Search is it enables this low latency kind of fuzzy search over your Snowflake data, right? So rather than having to kind of manually create this RAG application, you can do it really easily and quickly by yourself. And it also combines the keyword lookup as well. So it really is a enterprise grade, fully evolved, mature search service that customers can use for different types of workloads. So that's what we're going to be working with primarily. And then we're also going to be using Microsoft Fabric and the Fabric workspace and the notebook and showing you how to access Cortex, that Cortex Search Service. We can kind of move on to the use case here. The use case we're going to be looking at is a medical use case, right? So we're going to say that we have some discharge records, right? So we have some patients that were admitted into a hospital and they were discharged. And then we have this kind of free text field that has the physician's notes at discharge. And we're also going to pretend that, let's say that there was an outage to some sort of a drug that's it's commonly prescribed for folks who are allergic to penicillin, right? So a different type of an alternative antibiotic than penicillin. And what we need to figure out is, hey, we need to quickly figure out which patients are allergic to penicillin that were recently discharged so that we can notify them, help them understand what options they have, because there might be some supply chain issues, and also work with maybe our internal pharmacy at the hospital to make sure that we're supplied up on all these different alternatives to penicillin, because maybe our primary alternative has gone out of stock or we're having supply chain issues with it. So that's sort of the general use case that we're going to be kind of flowing through right now. Okay. So let's actually get our hands dirty here. We're going to be setting up a Snowflake environment. So the first thing that you'll do is just come in here and copy all of this code. That's right, it's inside the quick start. So go ahead and copy that on your clipboard, and then come into your Snowflake account, right? And you can go ahead and open up a new worksheet, or if you already have a kind of a preloaded worksheet, or create a new SQL worksheet right here with the plus button in the top right. And I already have it kind of loaded up here. And then what you'll do first is you'll make sure you're using the account admin role, or if you're using your organization account, just try to use whatever role that gives you the most access. It tends to go better for these labs. And then we're going to create a new a new warehouse called HOL_warehouse. You could always just do a kind of a use warehouse. If you don't have access to create a warehouse, you can just kind of click use warehouse and use a warehouse that you have access to. And then we're going to create a database called medical notes as well. So go ahead and you can kind of run that code by highlighting it and clicking the run button at the top right, or command enter to run it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a stage, right? So we're going to access the data, right? We're going to access an external, or create an external stage so that we can access the data. And then we're going to create an empty table here that's called medical notes. So this is just a table with all the fields that we're going to be loading the notes into. I need to update this commented here. That's from the last quick start that we built. And then we're also going to create another table that we're going to be using later to kind of drop some data. It's the last thing that we'll do. We're working from the Fabric notebook. Okay, so what we have now, if we've run all this, is we have a stage with a CSV file that has some data in it. And then we have these two empty tables inside of this database. And what we want to do now is take the data from that CSV file and drop it into this medical notes file. So we're going to use the Snowflake UI to do that. The Snowflake UI has come a really long way. It's great, especially for these demos, to be able to set up and get data loaded. So what we'll do is we're going to go to databases on the left side of the screen. We're going to go into the medical notes database in the public schema, find that medical notes table, and then add some data from the stage. So let's go ahead and do that. So we go to databases. I will scroll down to medical notes. I will go into the public schema. I will find the medical notes table. This is that empty table, right? 0 rows. And then I'll click load data. You may need to select your warehouse here. If you're prompted, go ahead and select that HOL_WH warehouse. What I'll do is I'll click add from stage. Once you have your warehouse selected, go ahead and select that. And it's going to be inside, again, we created that stage inside the medical notes database. So we'll select that. It's inside the public schema. And then there'll be this notes stage. And then we're going to click enable directory table. And then from there, we have this prescription data.csv file that we're going to click add. And then next. And then great. So this is, like I said, this is relatively new functionality inside of Snowflake, but it really makes kind of getting started with these types of use cases so much easier. You can see here we're sort of mapping the different fields from that CSV file to the fields inside the Snowflake table that we have. You can even click on table preview and take a look at all of the different fields we have. The primary field that we're going to be most worried about is this text field, right? That has those discharge notes in it. So this data set is already put into a rows and columns for us, right? It's already in a structured format. In a bit, I'll talk about kind of some of the great functionality Snowflake has for getting data from unstructured into the structured format really quickly and easily to make the creating Cortex Search even that much more easy. Out of scope for this hands-on lab, but I want to point you to some resources to show you how to do that. But getting back to this, we'll just go ahead and click load. And you see we loaded 744 rows. Let's just click done. We don't have to query the data right now. We'll click done, and then we'll go back into projects and into that worksheet we were just in. So if you kind of come below these notes that we're walking us through how to do the UI load, and if you're still behind and you're like, wait, what did he do when he's looking through? You come back here, right? The notes are all here in the comments. I'll kind of show you how to load the data. But what I can do here is just go ahead and select the top 10 rows from that table we just loaded. You can see here we have, the category, the admission type, the diagnosis, and then we have this text field, right? You can see here, these text fields are pretty large, right? There's a lot of information in here. There's notes from the different labs, radiology, symptoms, things like that. We do have, allergies up here at top, which is going to be relevant for the use case because we're talking about allergies to penicillin. So once we have the medical notes table loaded, what we can do now is create the Cortex Search Service. And it really is just this easy, right? So we're going to create a service called mednotes_search_service. we're going to create that on top of that text field, right? So that's saying, hey, create the search service on top of that text field. That's what's relevant for, we're going to be the free text we're going to want to be searching. But then we're also going to say, hey, include these attributes available. So these are two fields that are available in the table. We want to be able to filter on those if we're going to use the search service. So maybe we're going to send a query, right? We're going to send a prompt, like asking, looking for records that are, allergic to penicillin, but we also want to maybe filter on a certain diagnosis or admission type. This is we're going to be using that HOL_WH warehouse. And then we're going to set a target lag of 30 days, right? What this says is, what Cortex Search is doing, right, is it's kind of two steps, right? So there's sort of the back end processing, which is creating all the embeddings and preparing the data in that sense, and that's going to be updated every 30 days. That's what the 30-day lag says. What Cortex Search does on the other end is, whenever you call it or access it, it's going to embed your prompt and then do the actual kind of magic of searching and finding the relevant records to your prompt very easily. So let's go ahead and run this last block of code and create the service. It should only take 15 seconds or so. Keep in mind we are using I think an extra small warehouse, right? So it's relatively small. And then what we can do while that's running is we can kind of head back to the quick start and just make sure that your Fabric environment is set up, right? We're going to be creating a notebook inside of the Fabric environment. So hopefully it's done. And it is. You can see here, it's 16 seconds it took. So we created the search service, right? So now that's there. It's ready to be. We have those 744 rows. We can now access them with prompts. And let's do that, right? So we'll head into your Fabric service, right? So make sure you're in a workspace that has the appropriate license, that you have access to notebooks, which I think should be all licenses right now. And then go ahead and click New, click More Options, and then click Notebooks. So right now, the way that it's working with Fabric notebooks, and I know that this is evolving and updating, is we're going to have to make sure we have 8 of these code blocks here available to us, right? So we're going to have to be copying and pasting some code in. So go ahead and click Add Code several times, right? You're going to make sure you have 8 notebooks or 8 blocks of code. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have enough. And then come back over to your quick start, and we'll be on step 5. What we're going to do is kind of copy and paste some code in. So the first thing you're going to want to do, this is for my testing, you're probably going to want to have to install these packages here. So go ahead and run that. You can either run the cell there or use quick keys, whether you're using a PC or a Mac. And then while that's running, it's going to take a few seconds. You can go ahead and kind of go through the process of copying and pasting the rest of the code in, right? So this next one requires you to enter in your Snowflake account, your username and your password. So you can kind of go ahead and start entering that in, right? Your Snowflake account, right? You can kind of find it by going down here to the bottom. You can find different accounts here. You can kind of find your locator right there, and that'll show you kind of what to put into that parameter right there. So while that's installing, go ahead and enter in your Snowflake account, like I just showed you, your username and password. Obviously, the Snowflake connector for Python has other authentication methods. Using username and password works really well for a demo. Obviously, in the real world, you might want to consider something, like OAuth or SSO or key pair or something like that. And while you're copying and pasting all the code over, and so go ahead and fill in these parameters. Keep copying and pasting the rest of the code over into the remaining blocks of code in your Fabric notebook. So it's going to take us kind of a couple minutes to do that. But while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and initiate my notebook off screen and then remove my username and password so that I'm not exposing that to everybody. So keep working on this. And then what I'm going to do here shortly is kind of enter in sort of a pre-baked notebook that I have. And I'm doing so that you all don't don't have to see my username and password. So go ahead and keep working and give me a minute here to get this set up. Hey. Thank you for bearing with me, everyone. All right, so hopefully I gave you enough time to get all the code entered and you install these packages. Now your environment's all set up. So I've already run this. I've set up my connection parameters. So again, using account admin, we're going to be using that same warehouse to call the search service, and then we're defining the name of the database and the schema where that search service lives. And then I'm going to connect, right? Let's go ahead and run this and connect to our Cortex to our Snowflake account. And then what we're doing here in Python is you can probably kind of go back to this and take a look at what we're doing here within this next big block of code. It's here, I kind of duplicated my paste. Let's clean that up a little bit. We're setting a query, right? And this is something you can kind of go back and play around with. We're saying, hey, you are a helpful assistant. Take your time and be selective. Only retrieve records that clearly show the patient has an allergy to penicillin. Again, this is kind of and the diagnosis is related to pneumonia. Okay, so we're asking for pneumonia patients as well. You can go ahead and do what you want with that. You can play around. You can leave it as is, but it's kind of a nice, easy way to kind of set up your prompt in a parameter like that. You can see additionally what we're doing is we're going to say, hey, we want to retrieve all of these other columns along with the text column, right, which was the search service was built on. We'll say limit it to 1,000, which should be fine, right? We have 744 records. So if we're getting 744 records back, maybe something's not working right because we're getting all of the records back. We're defining the name of the search service here as SVC. And then we're also going to say, hey, we want admission type equal to emergency, right? So you want only patients that were admitted via the ER to be returned. And then we're going to go ahead and create the function that then, calls the Cortex Search Service and returns some results. So let's go ahead and execute this. So now we're actually creating a function, which is called search_records. Now let's go ahead and see, I was doing it earlier to make sure it worked here for the lab. Now let's go ahead and actually call that function with the parameters that we set up here. And then we're going to go ahead and drop them into a clean data frame to look at them. Okay, so yeah, pretty quick. So right within 13 seconds, we were able to go ahead and access that search service. Let's go ahead and use this display function, and you get some really nice functionality here inside of the notebook, inside of Fabric, to be able to kind of pick through and see the different records that you have here. So you can see here how many records did we return. Hopefully it's not all 700. it looks like it's maybe in the 400s. Yeah, we had 425 records returned. Okay, that's good. Didn't return all the records, so we are actually being selective. And let's like kind of go inside and look at, the actual text field that the search service was built on top of. Let's kind of just cherry pick a few records. So you can see here, this patient's age 31 to 50. They're female. They were, in the hospital for 2 to 4 days. And yep, they have an allergy to penicillin. So good job, Cortex Search and prompting to get it right, because a lot of times you can kind of play with the prompting to get better results. This next patient as well looks like they're allergic to penicillins as well as shellfish. And then it kind of come out here and say, oh, yep, another, this is a male, younger than 18, allergic to penicillins. Admitted for a fever. Looks like pneumonia patient as well. So so we're actually picking up on pneumonia patients as well, which is what we selected. The admission type should always be emergency, right? We did a simple filter on that, so that shouldn't be too complicated. And then, it looks like this another patient that also allergic to penicillins. So good. So it looks like the service is doing what it's supposed to do. We had a pretty decent prompt. If you want to, feel free to, you can go ahead and play with that prompt if you want to after this. You're more than welcome. And then let's do kind of one more thing here. We do this display function with summary equals true inside of the Fabric notebook. You now have this ability to kind of like click through. So we did filter on admission type, right? So if I click on admission type, it should all be emergency. Sure enough, it is. You can kind of take a look and click through and just kind of get a different feel for how the population is broken down for these patients who had an allergy to penicillins. It might kind of give you some insights, kind of maybe tell you about additional things. If you have, looks like we have a lot of patients who are a bit older, 70 plus, who have pneumonia and have allergies to penicillin. So that may be something kind of worth noting or calling. You can play around here a little bit with the chart type here. So it's some nice functionality here to be able to analyze the results that you got back from Cortex Search inside of a Fabric notebook. So this is just kind of simple, right? You're just calling this one service, but you can see how maybe let's say you had data on patients sitting in blob storage or sitting in OneLake somewhere, right? I should say OneLake, right? Sitting in OneLake, and you also wanted to use Copilot on that, right? You have some data in Snowflake, some data there. You can do it all in one notebook. Right. So you have one notebook sitting here in Fabric, and it's going to allow you to orchestrate from both services. Again, it's kind of sticking to that principle of you shouldn't feel like you have to move data over in mass, right? We're only pulling over the records we needed. Oftentimes you might not even need to pull this many records over, but it's easier to, it's more surgical. It's more surgical. It's definitely more secure. And it's a way to let you orchestrate between both platforms easily, securely, and be able to leverage the Gen AI that both platforms have. The last thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and just go ahead and take the records that we received from Cortex Search, these 425 records. Let's go ahead and put them back into Snowflake. Let's create a new allergy table, we'll call it, right? Where we're just going to put these records in, and maybe now we wanted to build like a Power BI dashboard or something like that on top of it, to be able to expose that to our clinicians or somebody to be able to kind of actually do something about it and contact these patients. Before we drop, the one thing I wanted to call out, and I mentioned this before, is the fact that we started with a structured table, right? We had a structured table with a text field in it, but what we have now, if you do a search for this, you can see it's snowflake.com, and look for streamlined RAG document preprocessing. At the time of recording this, it's fairly new, right? But we have these great functions to be able to, parse a document. So actually parsing a structured document, and then split, and this is in private preview, but in public preview is parse documents. So you should be able to use that from your account right now. And then coming soon, you'll be able to use split text recursive characters to be able to actually chunk the document, right? So, the scope of this lab was really kind of here, right? It was, building up the Cortex Search Service, and then we were using Fabric notebooks to go ahead and call that and orchestrate with that Cortex Search Service. But now with this parse _ document functionality and the split text recursive character that's in private preview coming, you kind of have full soup to nuts, right? So in true Snowflake fashion, it's really quick and easy to use, but also enterprise grade, mature, scalable for all organizations. So with that, I will go back to our presentation. And the last thing is call to action, right? So we do have several quick starts out there. I mentioned in the presentation part, like if you're orchestrating from Snowflake, if you're using Streamlit or notebooks or our worksheets, but you want to use Azure OpenAI, we have, that's with that Snowpark external access functionality. We have a quick start out there that shows you how to do that, right? Building Gen AI apps with Azure OpenAI, Snowflake, and Streamlit. We also have a lot of other quick starts, right? Calling one out here is how to use Azure Data Factory with Snowflake, right? It's been happening for many years now. We have a lot of integrations with Data Factory, with Data Factory in Fabric as well. But go ahead and go to quickstarts.snowflake.com, search Microsoft, search Azure. There's lots of great quick starts of showing you how to use Microsoft and Azure services with Snowflake. If you're interested in understanding how to better work with Snowflake and Microsoft, whether it's for AI, Gen AI, ETL integration, BI, please reach out to your account team, either at Microsoft or at Snowflake. Ask to get connected with the partner folks, with Shankar, with myself. We have a lot of other great colleagues who can help support you, answer questions, and clear up any confusion you might have. Because really, when you're leveraging Microsoft platform, the Snowflake platform, you're getting the best of both worlds. And you should be able to really easy and quickly implement your workloads. All right. Thanks a lot.
If you could use AI to make one part of your daily life easier, what would it be?
Most of my house is automated. I do have a slow cooker and a Roomba device, etc. But I would say if AI could really cook the food on its own and also clean the plates without me having to get involved, I would say that would be a great help for me in my daily life.
What is the most innovative use of AI that you've seen recently?
So we see a lot of customers use AI for different things. One of our retail and also an healthcare customers used AI to revolutionize the way that interact with patients. And we also saw a lot of demos and announcements around different companies that make use of AI. My personal favorite is the ability for you to optimize and create images and do graphic things which used to take a lot of time, but can just be done with few prompts using the power of generative AI.